Tyrone goalkeeper Niall Morgan back to the show for a bit of a reflection on the season that was. Niall, good morning to you. Thanks a million for taking the call. How are things?
I suppose it could be better. Obviously, disappointing season, but back to the club and stuff. So started with a defeat as well. So
yeah,
interesting times ahead.
Yeah, I saw you were lining out at number 15 for Eden Dork last week.
Yeah, well, sort of started in the full forward line, and then it wasn't working in there, so I went to midfield and it wasn't working there, so I was dropped to sweeper, so I could be in goals by this weekend the way things are going.
So what happened in the throughout the game that allowed you to keep being dropped back further and further and further?
I sort of play sweeper for the club whenever we're ahead, and try to shore up things in the back, but the ball just wasn't coming in, and then of course I started complaining, so moved me out, and then I realised I can't run anymore, so I moved myself sort of further back into sweeper, and we end up losing by 5 points, but it happens. A stark welcome back it was.
What are we now? Is it 8, 9, 10 days from the Armagh defeat? It's obviously something that's still on the top of your mind, Niall. Is it something generally at the end of a season that you take that defeat with you for a while and stew over it and try and take things from it for as long as possible?
Yeah, I suppose, like, whenever you get beaten your last game, like the Derry game, I suppose, going back to it, was not easy to take, but at least you've got another chance in a few weeks' time, whereas after the Armagh defeat and the way the seasons went and the shortened season, you're not going to have another championship game for nearly a full year, so it'd be hard to take. Not that we're any stranger to it, like we've been put out early before, but like we have to look, apart from the really shortened season of 2020, we have to look back to 2014 for an exit as early as that. So it was very disappointing, and that defeat was by Armagh as well, so it was very disappointing to go out like that, and I suppose it gives us plenty of time to mull over it and see what went wrong and see what we can do to better ourselves for next year.
Had you felt that you had righted the wrongs of the Derry game in between that and the Armagh game? Like, were you going in there with a real sense of confidence that Tyrone were going to be back in this fixture?
Absolutely. It was the same. Like, we didn't have a great league. We finished it off strongly with a win over Kerry, and we sort of felt like that was us sort of going to come back and start hitting our peak again. We trained really well right up until the Derry game, and then we put in a real flat performance. With all credit to Derry, like we just didn't have the answers, and we sort of felt like we trained really well between Derry and Armagh then, and that we were going to be able to iron things out. And again, it was a flat performance, but the credit has to go to Armagh for making us play that way. Like,
there's been a couple of things that have been, I guess, mentioned as reasons for Tyrone's exit early this year from the championship. I'm just very keen to get your take on them. Like, one of them is obviously the lads walking away from the panel this year. Did that have an impact on what happened this season?
It did. Like, at the start of the year, I was quite outspoken by saying that, yes, they would be missed, but at the end of the day, there's plenty of people to replace them. But like, the lads that left all had huge experience, and they were all pushing the starting 15 on and creating a better environment to train and stuff. And whenever you brought up a lot of sort of inexperienced players, they maybe were happy to do, like, I suppose in work terms, a line year, where they sort of felt like, they were in to get their experience in the first year and then push on from their second year. And it probably not held us back in training, but it just wasn't at the same intensity because of that, because we were used to always being pushed on, and if you didn't perform, you lost your place. Whereas maybe there was a little bit of complacency set in this year, that a group of lads knew that we were going to play.
Was there a common reason why a lot of them left?
No, they all actually had their own reasons. Like, right. Some of them were just coming to the end of their time and felt like they had nothing more to give. Some of them were moving house. Some of them were getting ready to get married. Some of them wanted to travel, and just like, there's no fallout or anything as such. It was just everybody was sort of coming to that time, and like, it was lads that had served Tyrone for a number of years. It wasn't that lads were there for 2 or 3 years and decided they've had enough. It was just boys had basically run their course and were ready to try new things.
So now you could actually feel it in training then, that it wasn't the same intensity to the year prior. Like it wasn't up to probably that standard that you would have set when you won the All-Ireland.
Yeah, like you always feel like you're training your best, but like whenever you reflect back on it, you probably realise that there was the small percentages that we were doing last year were probably missing a little bit. And like you obviously don't mean for it to happen, and you don't go out and say, "Oh, we won the All-Ireland this year, we're not going to try next year." And it wasn't that we were looking back and saying, "Oh, we're the best team in Ireland," and we actually sort of spoke about maybe we weren't using the title enough in terms of we weren't imposing ourselves in games. Like whenever Dublin are All-Ireland champions or Kerry are All-Ireland champions and they come to play, there's that aura about them that, they're sort of mentally wise, they're saying that you're not going to beat us because we're the best team in Ireland, whereas we didn't really have that sort of confidence about us. And it maybe held us back from like imposing ourselves, as I say, and finishing out games and really beating teams. And it told, come the championship.
That's really interesting, because I think that the automatic analysis of any team after winning a trophy who doesn't manage to win that trophy again is that, they got carried away with the notions of being champions of whatever competition it may be. But it's really interesting to hear you say that it's the opposite of that maybe the chest wasn't puffed out enough this year.
Yeah, definitely. Like, and it's an inexperienced thing from our part. Like, we've obviously, there wasn't any players in that team had won the All-Ireland before. Obviously, there's minors and under 21 medals there, but like we maybe just didn't use it to our advantage and nearly have teams coming, especially to Healy Park, and saying, like, this is our home ground. You're coming to the home of the All-Ireland champions and you're not getting out of here with anything today. And whereas we nearly, I wouldn't say shied away, but we didn't want it to look like we were arrogant or that we expected to win again. And it probably went against us then in the end.
Was there almost like a nervousness that you are actually the All-Ireland champions and you didn't get the results at the start of the year that you would have liked, and then you go into the league and probably not the results or performances that you would have been known to put in from the previous year? So does there a bit of, I don't know, as you said, complacency, nervousness all around the whole situation then?
Yeah, I think like last year, obviously at the start of the year was the lockdown, and like we had 2 or 3 months where we weren't together, but we were all putting in a lot of work, individually. Whenever we arrived at training, we started off the year and we were flying fit, so we had a lot of time to work on the basics. Whereas this year, we went on our holiday and we didn't train at all beforehand, and we never caught up. And it was easy to see that. Like we tried to do a couple of running sessions in Florida and Miami, and we'd done a couple of gym sessions, but it just wasn't the same. And you probably felt for a period at the start of the league like the work wasn't done in comparison to last year, where we knew we were hitting the ground running. And it just fed into the rest of the year. Because of the shortened season, there wasn't really a time where you could do a catch-up block, because it was just games coming thick and fast. And like that's probably the biggest learning curve for us, is that if you don't have the work done at the start of the year, you're not going to be able to catch up at any point now.
Just when you mentioned the holiday there, I know it was quite late because of COVID. It was probably pushed out quite a bit. I just often thought, what did Brian Dewar and Fergal Logan think of that? Did they think that the holiday was too late to be going away? Obviously you should go on the holiday, enjoy it, you win in All-Ireland, but did they think it's too late now, lads, we're into the next year?
No, like anytime Tyrone ever get to an All-Ireland, the holiday was always at the same time of year. You went straight after Christmas, and it was to suit the teachers basically, because they couldn't get off school during the year. But like just thinking back to 2018, like we had a bit of training behind us before we even went on holiday, whereas this year I think we had total of maybe 3 sessions done, and that was because after the All-Ireland last year we still had 10 club league games to play on the championship. So our club season didn't finish to the second week in December, so we didn't even have a chance really to, have a bit of a break, and we were just straight back in, and then there's boys carrying knocks and stuff, and just, it's, I suppose it's their excuses in a way, but we didn't deal with them well enough as a group, and it's big learning for us that going forward, if we were ever in the position again, we'd have to be doing things differently.
You say that maybe you haven't really properly processed the end of the season just yet, but from what you're saying there, it sounds like you've already put your finger on exactly what happened this year. I'd say all of your subconsciouses have touched on exactly what went wrong for Tyrone in 2022.
Yeah, I would be a deep enough thinker in terms of what is going wrong, even whenever things are going right. I'm trying to nearly pick holes and see where it can get better, where we can get better, and we haven't had an end of season meeting or anything, and because we were straight back into the clubs. But I think everybody's got the same general idea, and nobody's blaming one person or saying that it was, it all fell on one mistake or whatever. There was loads of things throughout the year that we know we have to do better on going forward, and it's just a huge learning curve. And it's not saying that we're going to come back next year and win All Ireland, by no means, but we would expect to be coming back with a stronger season next year.
There's a lot of other things that we wanted to ask you about, Niall. I guess one of the really interesting themes this year, once again, has been the role of the goalkeeper. It's something we spoke about with you at the end of last season, because your role is so significant in scoring for Tyrone to get them over the line in the key games in the All-Ireland series. This year felt like the conversation went to a whole other level. I'm not sure how much of it you were consuming, but certainly from Rory Beggan's point from play early in the league against yourselves, actually, wasn't it, on the first weekend of the league, and obviously Ethan Rafferty a couple of weeks ago getting 2 from play against yourselves in that game as well. So that conversation has been happening on one level, and then on the other end you have questions about goalkeepers being caught off their line, and obviously Mayo scored a long range goal themselves the other day. That conversation, I presume you're very much in favour of the roving goalkeeper role, and that people, the detractors of that role, possibly need to take a deeper look. Am I oversimplifying your opinion on that?
No, I think you've basically got it spot on. I think the important thing is the timing of when you do it, and the goalkeeper themselves, if they're capable of doing it. My biggest worry was, I spoke to a couple of other goalkeepers about it whenever we started playing that way, was that club managers would just start telling the goalkeeper that we expect you to play like Niall's playing or Rory's playing or Ethan now, and even Eoin Lynch is doing the same. And it's like we've all had experience of playing outfield, maybe not so much for Rory, but he's been playing that role for Scottstown for years. And I think that the important thing is that you're not getting caught, obviously, but it's the timing of the game whenever you go. And like, I know Mayo got their long range goal yesterday, but the game was up, and Aaron O'Neill was just trying to help out his team by getting forward and being an extra body. And yes, he was caught, but I don't think it really affected the result. I think the result was only going one way at that stage anyway. And like, what do you see as standing your goal at that stage of the game, and Mayo having an extra man back? So I think it's all about timing and what you get involved in and why you get involved in it. But if you're being detrimental to the play or slowing things down, I don't think it's of any benefit. Whereas if you look at the way Ethan played against us, he was breaking tackles and carrying the ball out of defence, and like, we're no stranger to Ethan playing midfield against us like in years gone by. So he's got more than enough of ability. But we just need to make sure that the goalkeeping skills are still being kept, and we don't lose track of the main job that we have at hand.
And now I know it's very early since you have been knocked out, but do you have any summer plans? It's probably earlier than even normal with the schedule being pushed so far forward. So obviously you're back into club, but do you have any plans now? What are you doing with yourself? You probably don't know what you're at with not having county training.
Well, just straight back in the club, and you're still out of the house training 2 or 3 times a week, and your matches at the weekend. And I have a holiday booked now for August, but we were going that anyway because the county season would have been over. And whenever school finishes, it'll just be family time and golf. So there's silver linings everywhere you look.
Just a couple of other questions, Niall. First of all, who's more likely to make it to an All-Ireland final, Derry or Armagh? You've seen them both.
You can't be putting me on the spot like that. I think it would be, with no disrespect to Clare, I think Derry will be looking to be beating them, and Armagh Galway will be a real tight game. I'm not sure who'll come out of it, and Clare had a serious upset with Roscommon there, so they'll maybe fancy a chance at Derry as well. And it was definitely an interesting draw. I like the way Armagh play. I think the kicking that they have and the work rate. I think it'll be more suited to Croke Park than sitting back. We tried that for a number of years with Tyrone, and Croke Park saps all energy out of your system. I know it's not that much bigger than many pitches, but just the stadium in general seems to just sap your energy, and it's hard to play that game where you're getting forward and you're getting back every attack and every time the other team get the ball. So it'll be interesting to see how Derry cope with that. But it's nearly another silver lining for me personally to see how well Armagh and Derry have performed in the games after they beat us, because I was sort of worried that it would be a one-off game and it would look really bad on us. But they've showed that they're two good sides, and Derry going on to beat Monaghan and then Donegal, it has to be one of the best Ulster title wins in many a time. So it would be tough to see another Ulster team going on and get the final or even win it. But I would much prefer to see Sam Maguire coming up the country than going anywhere else.
That's interesting on Derry, that at that point about, I guess, Croke Park being a completely different universe to some of the other grounds for a multitude of different reasons. Do you think that if Derry are going to go all the way, that they need to tweak the game plan slightly in order to get over the line in some of those big games?
It's going to be hard because, say, we played that way with Tyrone for a number of years.
Yeah.
When we got to Croke Park, Dublin and Kerry always seemed to find their way around it, and even Mayo as well when we came up against them. So Dublin, Kerry, Mayo are no strangers to playing against packed defences and being patient and working their way around it. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes against one of them teams. Should they get to play them? I know now they're at the other side of the draw, so the only time they'll get them is in a final, and as everybody knows, in a final anything can happen, and Derry will maybe see it as a one-off chance to really go for broke. And against us, everybody thought that we would eventually outdo them, and they ran away with our game. Everybody thought Monaghan would eventually outdo them. They done the same, and everybody thought that Donegal would outdo them, and they done the same to them. So, look, it's going to be an interesting end of the championship, put like that. And I don't know how much of it I'll be able to watch and stomach, but it's great to see Ulster teams still down at the top table, regardless of whether it's us or not.
Just one last question for me anyway, Niall, just on the other side of the draw. It kind of feels to me, maybe I'm stretching this, but it kind of feels to me as if Mayo were in a relatively similar position to you guys last year, where they took a bit of a hockeying off Kerry in the league, and now they go into a knockout game in Croke Park against Kerry in the championship, with Kerry maybe coming in off a relatively straightforward Munster title. What can they learn from what you did to them last year in order to overturn that result and get a big win and get themselves into the semi-final?
It's hard to probably point a finger exactly at what they can do, but it's we sort of always say that the team that works hardest is going to win, and it can be as simple as that. And we felt like last year we outworked every team, and this year we didn't have the work done ourselves to be able to do that, and we were outworked by Derry and we were outworked by Armagh, and that's why they beat us. Because at county level, everybody's got the basic skills. It's just who's willing to really go that extra mile. And for Mayo to beat Kerry, they're going to have to do that, because this Kerry team 1-15 is definitely the best team in the country. And they were the best team in the country last year, but we outworked them. And it's whether they're willing to go to the well or not to get over the line. and that's the biggest question mark, I suppose, that sits over Kerry at the minute is whether they're willing to go that extra mile to get the All Ireland.
And now, do you think coming through the Ulster Championship or the provincial that it's an advantage? Like, I remember last year seeing you against Kerry, I thought that was something you really had on them, that you had those tough games, and then when it came down to it, you really could push on. You had that experience in the prior games when I don't think Kerry really had that. Is that something that, whatever happens with Kerry Mayo and with Derry, and say it is Derry Armagh, you know, do they have an upper hand in that way, that they've had these really tough games? You know, they have to, you know, really fight for each result they've got, when Kerry haven't really been tested. It remains to be seen, obviously, what happens now with Mayo. I'm sure there's going to be a lot different, but, you know, they haven't really had too many tough games.
It can work for and against. I think, like, we always said it was hard whenever you were coming out of Ulster. Like, Derry, for example, have beat us, Monaghan, Donegal, and one slip up and they're gone. Like, whereas, like, Kerry haven't got out of second gear, like, and they're now in an All-Ireland quarter-final, and I suppose it's frustrating for the likes of us having to always, you know, be at the top of your game, or you're knocked out. You have no chance of winning the provincial, and I think that's where maybe the provincials are losing a wee bit of heart, like, because even Dublin as well, you know, they countered how many Leinsters in a row now, and it's crazy to think that they can work hard for the league and basically take 5 or 6 weeks. Like I was saying, we couldn't get a catch-up period, whereas, like, Dublin Mayo can train really hard for 5 or 6 weeks in preparation for an All-Ireland quarter-final. So it can be advantageous in terms of they should have the work done, but it's whether they have, as you say, been through them tough times together, and whether they know the person beside them is really going to dig into them or not.
Niall, it's been great chatting to you. Thanks a million for being so generous with your time. Best of luck with the season with Eden Dork and with the golf game as well. Try and enjoy the summer as much as you can.
Thanks very much for having me. Thank you.